video, we are going to be talking about how to figure out what it is that you want and how to go there. So let's get started. In the previous video, we talked about how to live in a peak state, right? So this is you, right? You need energy to show up in the world to do things. When you've got energy, you can do things. When you learn to show up in the world, you can go out and make things happen. And when you don't have this, you can't, right? So if you can't manage your state, you really can't go anywhere. You really can't make anything happen. You really can't get yourself to do all the things that you want to get yourself to do at the most basic levels, right? So we have to manage our state before we can do anything else. So that's what the previous video was. I'm gonna put a link in the description. That way, if you guys have not watched that video already, that one is the precursor to this one. But assuming you have watched that, now you learn to show up in a peak state, right? State being the level of focus, energy, vibrancy you're showing up in the world with day to day, moment to moment, business life, personal life, and that's where we start, right? So now we're on to this next video, and let's say you're here, right? And you want to go here. So point A, point B. And a lot of these motivational videos, they say like, oh, well, assuming you know what you want, blah, blah, blah. But not that many videos, at least that I've come across, talk about how to figure out what that is, right? And it's actually very, very tricky for a lot of reasons. So I'm gonna be erasing and drawing a lot. I'm gonna erase this real quick so we have some more space. So give me one moment. All right, cool. So when we're a kid, we know how to dream, right? Let's go back to when we were kids, and it's gonna make more sense. When you're young, you know how to dream, right? You know how to think big thoughts. You know, when Christmas is coming or their birthdays are coming, they're willing to say crazy things, right? Like, I want a swimming pool, or I want a race car, or I want a whatever, right? They're willing to say big things. And it's sort of like they still have their innocence and their joyfulness, and they still believe that everything is possible. And I think that's sort of what human beings are in our most beautiful state, but they're also kids, right? There's also things that they don't know, and they're not paying bills or whatever, but there's a certain joyfulness about them, and they have the ability to dream. And so one of the reasons that it gets so difficult to know what we want, meaning whatever the heck this is that as we get older, let's say that bigger stick figure is the older version of us, you know, we failed so many times at so many things, and life has stomped us into the ground, right? And we're sort of told to be realistic, and we're told, you know, that certain things aren't possible, or, oh, well, how would you even really go about doing that? And we don't know how to answer those types of things. And you know, maybe the people around us might not have this certain big ideas that we have. Let's say that's a possibility too. So there's all these different things, environmental factors, the world, family, friends, things around us, the failures that we've had that are sort of pushing ourselves down. And so by the time we're adults, it gets very, very hard to dream, right? We've sort of forgotten how to do it. So I think the first reason this is really hard is we've sort of forgotten how to dream. So I'm gonna erase this here, one moment. All right, cool. I think another reason that this is very difficult is because we never really ask ourselves the right questions to begin with. There's a great line by Tony Robbins where he says, the quality of our life is determined by the quality of the questions we ask ourselves. And I found that to be true, and I think that's a great line. So we don't always ask ourselves question of what this is. So there's a great line that we're gonna go into in just a moment from Brian Tracy. He's a famous personal development guy. This is an idealization exercise that he does with executives and all different people. And he basically asks the question of, what would your life look like if it's perfect in every way and impossible to fail? And that's a very high quality question. And so you start getting some higher quality answers. But I'll come back to that in just a moment, because there's another thing that I want to share here. So one of the reasons why we don't know what this is because we forget to dream, right? So let's say we kind of forget how to dream as adults. Maybe one of the reasons is we're not asking ourselves very good questions. Instead of asking ourselves a question like, what would my life look like if it's perfect in every way and impossible to fail, we're asking ourselves a question like, how can I make it through this day and be somewhat happy maybe, or be able to pay my bills hopefully, or like, so it was, those are good things too, but it might not be like the highest quality of question that really brings out, the most joy in us. So if we're not asking ourselves exciting questions, we're probably not going to get to what this is for us, right? So we got dreaming, questions. I think the next one, let's say, so yeah, we've got the questions here, is, let's say, practicality. Practicality, right? I think a reason that this is very hard to know is practicality. So, let's say, I think everybody can probably relate to this, right? Where you start to think of what you want. Maybe you ask yourself, or somebody asks, oh, what is it that you really want, right? It sounds so corny, sounds so easy, sounds like something that we should just all know. But most people don't, right? And so what do I mean by practicality? What I mean is you start to have a thought, right? Those little like thought bubbles, I guess. You start to have a thought of what this is, and then you start to think things like this. How would I do that, right? And then that crushes the thought. Or money, I don't have the money. That crushes the thought. Resources, maybe time, maybe energy. That crushes the thought. Skill sets. That crushes the thought, right? I don't have the abilities for that. Maybe I'm not that type of person. I'm not that type of person. I've never been that type of person. I've never done something like that before. So why should I think that I should make that now? Impossible, right? It's not possible, or it's not possible for me, or it's not realistic, or whatever, right? So there's all these things that start coming up. So we're here, and we're gonna get to this in a moment. For right now, we're just talking about where we wanna go, right? And this introduction here is why this is difficult. So we start to think about what this is, and there's all these reasons why this sort of gets stomped out. So it's almost like the second we begin to have these thoughts, we sort of stomp them out. And they don't get to really fully materialize, and we don't get to really figure out what they are. And obviously that's a problem, right? Because we know that if we have something we want, we can reverse engineer it, work our way backwards, figure out how to go about getting it. But if we just don't have this in the first place, then that's tricky, right? So these are some of the reasons that this is hard. Some more reasons this is hard is, I'm gonna say, not big enough. A lot of times this isn't big enough, and so it doesn't really excite us, and so we don't really go anywhere, and we don't really continue to develop, what this is. So we're just not excited, we're not engaged, and that's a reason for this being tricky to know or to move towards it. It's just, just have some small ideas that don't really excite us very much. And then I'm gonna write not specific enough. I know my handwriting's terrible. Not specific enough. As you're taking notes, you can write these things down for yourself. So not specific enough. So a lot of people say things like, I want to be happy, I want to make more money, I want to travel more, I want to have a better relationship with my spouse, I want to do more of the things I love, and I want to be more fit, and I want to be more fulfilled, right? And those are all good things, and that's good to want those things, and I want those things too. The problem is it's really, really, really vague, and our mind has no clue what that means. I'm gonna erase this real quick because I wanna show you an analogy where this is also gonna make more sense. So just to recap what some of this stuff says, if you're taking your own notes, or if you wanna take a screenshot to kind of have a reference point, even though I know my handwriting is messy. So we've got, you're here, you want to go here. Reasons this is hard: we forget how to dream, we don't ask good questions. Practicality, right? How would we go about doing that? How? Maybe we don't have the money, we don't have the resources or time, we don't have the skill sets, we're not that type of person. This is not big enough, it's not specific enough. So these are all reasons that make figuring this out and going towards it tricky. but I want to give you an analogy and draw this out for you, the analogy of Google Maps. So I'm going to erase this and then I'm going to show you what I mean. Okay, so I think this will be helpful for you. So with Google Maps, right? With Google Maps is a great example. You have to put in an entry point and an ending point, right? And if you've ever put something vague in Google Maps, you've probably had the experience, like let's say your A is like your starting location, which Google Maps kind of knows that, right? But let's say that you put hotel in Google Maps, right? And let's say this is Google Maps, and let's say you're here. Then what is Google Maps gonna do? It's gonna start to populate a bunch of hotels all around the place, right? So right? Hotels everywhere. But it's not gonna tell you which one to go to or how to get there. And so the next thing that's gonna happen is you're just gonna stay stuck and you're not gonna go anywhere, right? However, let's say you've got starting location. Let's say you've got starting location and you put like, I don't know, anything specific in your area, or even if it's something in another country, but you put what that is. And I don't know if you've ever done this before where you put in something in another country, but Google Maps will even tell you like, go to this airport, get on a plane, fly to this airport. Like it can take you pretty much anywhere in the world. You've probably been on like weird little back roads before and you're like, how the hell does Google Maps even know about these damn back roads, right? That don't even seem like real streets. I've been on things before that don't even have roads. It's like dirt, but Google Maps is taking me on something that it knows. So the point of this is that a lot of times we're not specific enough and we don't realize how specific we actually have to be for it to click into our mind. So the same way that Google Maps is not the problem here, it's not the operating system of Google Maps that is falling short of not getting us to the hotel we want to go to. It's the way that we coded it. It's our fault. Google Maps doesn't work that way. It's plenty strong, it's plenty capable and powerful, but you sort of have to give it the proper instructions. And so it's that way with our mind too. And so it's the difference between saying like, I want to go on more vacations and saying like, I want to go to Barcelona, Spain for 2 weeks at the end of October this year, 2023. Or like, I go to Barcelona, Spain, you know, October 15th to October 30th of this year, 2023. You see how like, if you're just saying I travel more, your mind's sort of like, okay, like I don't really get that. Like there's nothing really happening. And our mind's kind of trying to figure out what we mean, doesn't really know what we mean. And it sort of just gets sort of exhausted and annoyed and doesn't do anything. But you can probably hear in this example, if I say, I want to travel more, and your mind's like, okay, what is Justin talking about? Versus, I go to Barcelona October 15th to October 30th this year, 2023, right? Then it's like your mind clicks in. It's like, okay, I know what that means, and now it can start getting us there. So this is a big reason that we don't figure, or that we're not able to go where we want. And so we're needing to be way more specific. So now let's get into some more details. There's one more final thing that I want to show you real quick. I'm going to erase this to make one final point, and then we're going to start to map out really answering the question of like starting to get some clarity. You can start to see this process. You can start to work on it for yourself, and we're going to build out of it, and this is all going to continue to make more and more sense. I just wanted to give you some background so you're starting to get an idea of like, okay, why is this such a hard question to answer? How does our mind work or not work? Why is it that we typically are stalling out and not really being able to answer this question? Because I think that's important. Let me delete this. I want to show you one more thing, and then we're going to keep going into some more details. One more final thing I want to share before we get into some of the details, it's going to help this to make more sense, is that I think that a lot of people think that you sort of just should know what you want to do. And there are some people, right, that, you know, ever since they were 4 years old, they always wanted to fly airplanes, or they always wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer or a dentist and they were always fascinated with people's smiles ever since they were a little kid. It's like, yeah, that does happen. But I think a lot of the times it takes sort of figuring it out, and I think it takes sort of sitting down and thinking. It takes taking action and moving forward. So with this, we're gonna get into this clarity activity now, but I wanna just show you this little drawing because it's helpful for me and I think it will be helpful for you too. I think in a lot of ways you can think of clarity and figuring out what it is that you want, how you want your life to be going, in a similar way to anything else, where it's actually something that is like a muscle. It needs to be built. It takes work, it takes focus, it takes energy, it takes putting the time in. And with putting the time in, your clarity gets better and better. And when your clarity is better and better, you're able to go where you want to go, or at least have a chance. And when you don't have clarity, you don't have a chance, and your life can never be a fraction of what it should be or would be or could be, right? So I want you to think of this as something that actually takes work. So like you sit down and you work on this, right? So as you guys are learning, I like to draw pictures. So let's say this is a little work guy and he's got his little shovel. And let's say this is like your mind, right? And it's almost like you're digging around in your mind and you're like thinking and you're trying to figure out like who it is that you are and what's in there and how your life should be going. And you can almost think of yourself as like digging, right? And you're trying to find this gold. You're trying to find answers of like, what are the answers for you, right? So I just show you this so you can see that this takes work. This takes like sitting down with your laptop or paper and pen and working on answering this question of what would my life look like if it's perfect in every way and impossible to fail. Now, this is answering a macro clarity question, right? So there's macro clarity, big picture, right? Our entire life. The further we zoom out and can see the whole chessboard, the more strategic we can be, the better things are gonna go. And then there's micro clarity, right? Micro clarity, more specific, shorter term, all these different areas of our life, more like right now. And we're gonna look in that in more detail too. The whole where we are and where we're going, right? But I find the most helpful place to start is here, right? Macro clarity, big picture, how do we want things to look? So that's what we're gonna start, and we're gonna go to this activity now. What would your life look like if it's perfect in every way and impossible to fail? And I'm gonna sort of do the little mini version of this with you now so you can sort of see how it goes and you can know how to work on this for yourself. And we're gonna continue to go into more and more detail and really kind of put all of these pieces together so this is able to make sense and you're able to figure out all this stuff for yourself. So, all right, let me erase this, and we'll go to this activity now. So I'm gonna write this question at the top here. And you should be taking notes as well, but you can take screenshots, whatever makes this easiest for you. All right, beautiful handwriting, I know. What would my life look like if it were perfect in every way and impossible to fail? So what we wanna start doing, the way that we wanna answer this, guys, is we want to answer the questions as fast as we can. So like when I'm doing this with my clients, I'm sitting down with them either in person or via Zoom or phone or whatever, right? Depending on if they live here or somewhere else and how they like to meet. But I tell them to talk as fast as possible and I write down everything that they say, right? And then when I'm doing this activity, this is something I work on in my own life, is I'm writing everything down as fast as I can without stopping. And the reason for this is we want to know what's going on in our mind, what's inside our mind, what's inside of us when we're not editing ourselves, right? When we're not tweaking it, when we're not like, I don't know. We just want to know what comes out. And the more we do this macro clarity activity, the more we're just like rapidly sort of spitting out everything that is falling out of our minds, the more we've got all that, the more pieces we have to play with, and the more we're sort of starting to figure out what's important to us, what matters to us, how it is we really want things to be going, you know, what we wish was going differently. And another thing you're gonna find is as you keep doing this activity, there's certain things that are going to keep coming up, and for the things that keep coming up, those are things that are really important, right? Those are things that are really matter. So, you know, if you keep saying I would play more tennis, I would play more tennis every time you do this activity, you write that like 5 different times, then, you know, that's probably something that really matters to you, and you got to make a mental note of that. That's sort of part of the success formula of your life, of how things should look for you, right? So we're all human beings. We do have a lot in common, but each of our lives and each of our ideals are going to be different, right? We do vary a lot, each of us, right? So, and you want to do this in like what I find is 15-minute increments. This is what Brian Tracy recommended. I don't think I made up the 15 increments. I honestly don't remember, but you can set your timer, right? So when you're doing this after you finish watching this whole video, I would highly, highly recommend this. Do this at least once a week. Even if you could do it more, that would be great. The more you do this, the better your macro clarity is going to be. And the more you're going to be able to fill in everything, and the more you're going to be able to reverse engineer and make plans, and the more you're going to be able to move towards them, right? So this is really where it starts, guys. After learning to manage ourselves at a peak state, which we already went through in the last video, this is the next thing, the next question we want to start answering. And the more you put in the repetitions, just like anything else, of sitting down, setting your timer for 15 minutes, writing as fast as you can, seeing what comes out of your mind, the more it's going to all come together for you. So really, really do this on your own. But we're gonna do this a little bit now here. So we're just gonna do a mini version. I'm not gonna write for 15 minutes now, but I'm gonna do this so you can sort of see maybe what type of stuff my clients say, and then how I sort of make it more specific for them and tweak it, and then we'll kind of keep going and keep filling everything in so that you guys know how to do this for yourselves. So maybe my clients will say things like, a lot of the stuff I was saying before, right? Travel, time with family, better relationship with spouse, let's see, maybe if there's certain hobby they have, let's say they like to go hiking, right? So more hiking, exercise more, so these are some examples. You guys kind of get the idea. These are like certain things that they will say, right? And so as I'm doing this with them, I'm writing everything down, and then we sort of start to go back through everything and make it more detailed. And these are things you guys can do for yourself too. So, you know, spend the 15 minutes, crank everything out. You've got a big list of maybe 1 or 2 or 3 pages, whatever, all the stuff that you typed. And by the way, guys, if you're on a roll and you're just having so much fun and so much stuff is flowing out of your mind, which you might be surprised, that might be how it happens, is when your timer rings, the 15 minutes, just set it again. And sometimes you might write for 30, 45 minutes, might write for an hour, right? This happens to me because I'm just cruising and the time is well spent and I do it. So don't be afraid to sort of do this activity back to back. You can do that as well. But it's very important to keep kind of cranking it out without editing yourself. And then, so once you've done that, you can start to look back through here and you say, okay, so this is, you know, starting to be the macro picture of things that are important to me. But as you can tell from our Google Maps example, this stuff is very vague, right? And so if I told you I want to hike more and I want to exercise more and travel more and have time with my family and a better relationship with my wife, right? Or my spouse, whatever. You'd sort of be like, okay, like, what do you really mean by that, right? Your mind almost sort of like thinks and then rejects it. It's like, I don't know what to do with that, right? And our mind is the same way too. So when we write stuff like this down, we think we have clarity. People are like, oh yeah, I know what I want. You know, I want to travel more and be happier. More fulfilled. Right? People are like, yeah, I know what I want. You know, these are all the things that I want. And it's like, okay, but they're not able to take any action on it because really their mind has no clue what they're talking about. And that is not a problem of our minds. It is not that our mind is not like strong enough or capable enough, but it sort of needs to be prompted or coded, however you want to say, in a certain way so that it makes sense for it, which is super specific. So we gave a travel example already, right? Instead of saying, you know, I want to travel more, you could say, I go to Barcelona, Spain, October 15th through October 30th of this year, 2023. Click, that makes sense. Let's say, so at the time of this video, I live in Orlando, Florida. So maybe I say, I go to Clearwater Beach, or I spend the weekend in Tampa. You know, I don't know what the weekends are. I'm making up these dates, but like June 18th to June 21st, 2023. And your mind clicks in. It's like, okay, I know exactly what that means. And then that's something that we can reverse engineer, and that's something we can do something about, right? But when you say I want to travel, it's like it's not going to happen because it's like your mind just has no clue what the heck you're talking about. Time with family. If my clients wrote down something like that, I would say something like, okay, like how much time? Like what times of day? What would you be doing with them? What would be happening? So for example, instead of saying time with family, you could say, you know, I have dinner with the family every night at 6:30 p.m. I have dinner with my wife and children every night at 6:30 p.m. You see how that's like super specific? Your mind knows what it means. You can make a plan to do that. You know if you did it or not. You can track it. You can move towards it, right? Maybe it looks like, maybe if you have children that have a sport or soccer, like maybe you have little Emily, you know, your daughter, and you know, you want to go to her ballet recitals once a month or whatever, and that happens, you know, on the third Saturday of every month, and you write that down. I go to Emily's ballet recital on the third Saturday of every month, and so maybe this Saturday, I'm making up days, like June 15th, then you say, I go to Emily's ballet recital on June 15th, 2023, right? And it clicks in. So you see how different that is. So I would want to know, you know, what days of the week, what times of the day, what would you guys be doing? You know, what do you really mean by time with family? And this might seem like over the top specific, but it's really not. When you say time with family, your mind doesn't know what you mean, and it's not going to happen, right? Your mind sort of rejects it. And so that's the type of clarity I'm talking about there. So you guys are starting to get the idea. Let's say we're hiking. Okay, cool. How often? Where? For how long? I don't really know hiking places because I'm in Orlando. We don't have hiking places. But I'll make up a title like Black Mountain or something. You know? So maybe you go hiking at Black Mountain, you know, two times per month for 3 hours from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. or whatever, right? And you could pick the days, you could pick the times, you could pick where it is. And now instead of more hiking, it's like, who the hell knows what that means? Now you've got something specific, right? I go to this place on these days at this times for this long, and this is what it looks like, and I freaking do it. And now your mind's like, click. You can sort of probably even almost feel like a physical clicking as we're talking about this stuff of like, oh, okay, yeah, that really makes sense. I get what you're saying, right? Exercise more, same concept. So if you were writing out that you exercise more, it's like, okay, how many times a week? Where? For how long? Doing what? So maybe you could say, you exercise 5 times per week at your gym, LA Fitness, or whatever, for 45 minutes average each time. And then you could write that down and you could track it and you could know how you're doing and you could really do that. Versus exercise more, it could mean anything, right? And so you go through all this. And so the more of this really big picture macro clarity you can have, and the more you keep doing this activity over and over, like let's say we keep doing this activity over and over and hiking just keeps coming up, it keeps coming up, then that's important. That's part of the success formula of how our life should work. We need some hiking, right? Or whatever that is for you, basketball or soccer or dance or, you know, water skiing or whatever, right? It could be anything. So we have to figure out what those things are for us, and we have to be able to define what it is in a simple enough way that our mind can understand. So this starts to get us a little bit towards the macro clarity, right? And we want to try to see the whole big picture of our life and keep doing this activity, keep filling stuff in. And this is the beginning. This is where we start with clarity. And this is where your life sort of starts to take shape. There's a great quote, I think it's by Van Gogh, I want to say, where he says, "I dream my painting and I paint my dream." So you can sort of think like this is our canvas, right? And we're just sort of dreaming. We're allowing ourselves to dream like the child, right? The child knows how to dream, the adult, we forget. And remember, we're able to do this. We're temporarily not worrying about all of these other things, right? So when you're doing this activity, what does my life look like if it's perfect in every way and impossible to fail? We're sort of temporarily suspending or putting on hold all of our doubts, right? Because you might be thinking like, well, Justin, like, I don't have time for this and I don't have time for that, and I'm not that type of person, and that's not realistic, and I don't know how, and I don't have the money, and I don't have the resources, and I don't have whatever, right? There's probably a million reasons why you could write out all that stuff and be like, oh my gosh, but I can't write that because I can't do that. Like, how would I go about that, right? For right now, just push all that to the side. We will get to it. This is not about being unrealistic in the sense of we're just dreaming for no reason, right? But back to our little stick figures, we have to know what that is. We have to know what that is of where we want to be. And the way that we do that is by temporarily putting on hold all of those thoughts about why we shouldn't be dreaming and why we can't be dreaming and why that's not realistic. All of that stuff we will get to, I promise. But we just want to know what this is. And a lot of times when you just allow yourself to dream and just answer the fucking question, right? When you allow yourself to do that, a lot of times we realize we are not actually as far away from that as we think. It might not be tomorrow, might not be next year, but maybe within 5-6 years, or maybe less, maybe 1 or 2 or 3, maybe you can be there, right? So with clarity, the first thing we've got to do is we've got to start to figure out macro clarity. Got to start to figure out the big picture. Got to push all the doubts aside. We can come back to the doubts later, but as you're doing this activity and as you're answering all this, do not worry about how realistic you think that it is. Just try to put that on pause, put it to the side, and just answer this the best you can. And now we're gonna start to get into some even more details and some micro clarity and start to fill this in even more. So I'm gonna erase this. Just to recap, if you wanna take a screenshot of this or take any of your own notes of what this stuff says, it says, what will my life look like if it's perfect in every way and impossible to fail? And then our hypothetical person, our client, we put travel, time with family, romance or relationship with spouse, hiking, exercise, happier, more fulfilled, which those are really vague, right? Black Mountain up here, which I made up. So I'm gonna delete all this or erase all this, I keep saying that, and let's go into some even more detail. So I'm erasing that now. All right, so an analogy that I really like to use with the micro clarity is the analogy of a garden. So you can think of your life sort of like a garden, and every single one of the areas, they all matter, they all affect each other, right? They all have momentum towards each other. They all either pull each other up or push each other down, and so they all matter. And so, you know, they all need our attention, they all need watering, they all need taking out the weeds, right? They all need sunlight, they all need planting, they all need us to be there and care for it. And if we don't, then it gets messy and that causes problems, in the other areas of the garden. And so this is very helpful to look at our life like this. So I want to show you something. So we've got these different categories of our life, right? And these are categories, each human being is very different, but there are certain things that are just so core to the human being experience that we can all have them in common. And no matter who we are, we can look to these and really try to master these. So one I would say is spirituality, regardless of what you believe, right? Probably believe something. And so we've got that. Right? So we got spirituality, family, right? Everybody's got family. Even if you don't talk to them, you do have a family. Our health, right? Health matters for all of us. Got to take care of it. We don't have it, we're in trouble. Money, career, business, school, that whole category of life, right? So those could be broken up into different categories too. I'm just gonna put this as money/career. Romance, right? Intimacy. Part of the human being experience, true for all of us. It's a need we all have. Passions. Passions, what we love to do, what speaks to us deep down, right? It's part of being a human being. Friendship. Part of being a human being. We need friends. We need each other. We need that camaraderie, that community, right? And so it's part of the human experience. Friendship matters. Adventure. I think human beings, we desire excitement and fun and variety and exploring and learning and seeing and doing new things. I think that's a core part of being a human being. And another thing that I've got in here that's not necessarily a life category, but it's something I track because it's very important to me. And I think this is important to all people, is freedom. Right? So this is you, this is the garden, and you can think of this as a little snapshot of your life. And we can keep a running tab on everything that we're doing. So when I do this with my clients, I have them rate themselves on a scale of 1 to 10 in each of these categories. So we're just gonna make some numbers up. Follow along with me. You can do this with yourself. But 10 is like the category is going extremely well. If you remember from the video on state, we have this idea of base 10 meaning like it's going extremely well. Yes, it can always be going better. For my perfectionist people, they're like, oh, I can't rate myself a 10. It's like, well, base 10. Yes, it can always be better, but going extremely well. 1 going terribly. So what we want to do is we want to start to rate all these so we can see like, well, how is my life going? How am I doing? What areas am I paying attention to and doing a good job in? What areas am I maybe not so much that really do need my attention, right? So let's just say this person's spirituality is a 3. I'm just gonna make up some numbers here. Family's a 4, health is a 4, money's a 4, romance 2, passions 3, friendship 3, adventure 1, freedom 1, right? So this is helpful. This is helpful because now we have an idea of, okay, how are we doing? How is our life going? We can see where we're strong, see where we're weak, see what really needs our attention. So, typically you want to start, I think, with the areas that are giving you the most pain, right? So the things that jump out to me, if this was a real person, adventure's pretty low, right? A 1, they're not happy about that. Freedom is a 1. I'd probably want to learn more about that. Romance is a 2, right? So these are some really low categories. I think anything below a 3 means we really, really feel that it's not going well and it really needs our attention. So another thing we would want to do here is we would want to rate these, right? We want to rate these in the order of importance of how we value this stuff, right? Because we want to know what is our order of priorities? How are we doing in each of these things in relation to how much we value each of them, right? So let's just put some ratings on here. I could maybe even do my ratings and I'll explain why my ratings are the way they are. And maybe that will help you to do your ratings and to have them in an order that makes sense to you. these are not my metrics. These are just made up, but just because it will make sense if I order these my own way, because I'll be able to explain it. I think that will help you too. So I have spirituality first. The reason I have spirituality first is because I've been through a lot of really, really, really bad health stuff in my life, and I feel very certain that I would have been dead a long time ago if it wasn't for God. So sort of the way that I see it is, well, that's sort of got to be number one, because I would have been dead a long time ago without it. So it sort of makes sense to me to put it there. Family, I have number two. I have family number two because my family helped to keep me alive, and I think I would have been dead a long time ago if it wasn't for my family, from all of the crazy things that I went through. And so I feel like they have to be number two. I think I have health as number three. I have health as number three because, you know, my health is, if you're completely incapacitated by your health, then there's sort of nothing you can do, right? And so spirituality and family are the first ones because I'd be dead without them. Health is the next one because I wouldn't be able to do anything without my health. So that's why I order that there. I believe the next one that I have, fourth, is freedom. The reason that I have freedom is because I believe life is so short and so precious and so kind of fragile, and I want to be able to live my time how I want to live it. There's I forget who it is I first heard this from. Probably a lot of people talk about this, but this idea of alive time and dead time. Alive time is time spent doing what you want to be doing with that time, and dead time is, as it sounds like, it's time that you're spending that you don't want to be. So if you're at a job you hate and there's 10 hours a day of that, then, you know, that's dead time. And then you're hanging out with people you don't really want to hang out with for an hour a day, that's dead, right? So I feel like life is so short and beautiful, and I want to spend it how I want. That's very important to me. So it's one of the reasons I'm an entrepreneur, right? Is that's very important to me. So I had that as number four. And again, I'm explaining these things just so you guys don't have to order these for yourself how I'm ordering them. But this is just gonna help you to be like, oh, okay, so this is Justin's reasoning of how he's doing it that way, so I can sort of reason it out in my own way, right? Everybody will reason theirs out a little differently. Let's see, what do I have next? I believe that I have money next. Money, career. And this is all off the top of my head, but I believe that's the next one. And the reason that I have that next is because, you know, after freedom, okay, I can do what I want, but money is sort of another type of freedom, and it's like oxygen. It's like, it's not everything, but, you know, oxygen's not everything, but it's important. And so money can allow me to live. Without money, we're sort of screwed. With it, we sort of have much more ability to move about the world and do things and live how we want. Not that it solves all our problems, but it sort of enables us to live. And so that's why I have that after freedom. It could sort of potentially be linked with freedom, but, you know, different category. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's nine categories here. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 5. I believe I put romance as 6. Important category for me. I think that category is definitely an absolute blessing to be able to have, you know, the connection with someone or with people in that way. I think that's a really beautiful part of life. I think romance and those things add so much flavor and color into life. And so that's where that would be. And that might sound pretty far down for all this stuff, but again, I had this stuff here for reasons, right? Would be dead without God, that's gotta be there. Would be dead without my family, that's gotta be there. Would be completely incapacitated like I was before without my health, that's gotta be there. Can't live how I want without freedom, that's gotta be there. Can't really do anything without money, that's gotta be there. Color of life, romance, after you're surviving, you know, that's sort of what we want. We want to survive, then we want to reproduce, right? Basics of being a human being. So, you know, after you sort of got the bases covered, I mean, romance, it's a beautiful, beautiful category of life. So again, my orders doesn't need to be your order. I think we've got 2 more categories. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think passion, or I think passions was my next one, and then friendship. Friendship's important to me, it is, but so passions, at least for me, I dance salsa. As of the timing of recording of this video, I'm dancing a lot, maybe like close to 20 hours a week, which is close to 3 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is something I really love. You know, this is something that I think is part of, you know, my ideal of how I see myself in my head and how I want my life to be going. So it's very, very important to me. Friendship is super important to me too. This is still a category of life. But these are just, I believe this is everything that I've got in mind. I believe that this is how I ranked them. But this gives you an idea of how I ranked it, so that you can have your own logic as you decide. You know, your order may be different, but it gives you an idea. And so you can have this as like a running tab in your mind of sort of the things that you're doing well, the things that need your attention. I want to portray this to you in another way, because I think this other visual is also very, very helpful. And this is a visual that I sort of have running in my head at all times for my own life, and it really helps me to guide my decisions on the day-to-day of what I need to be chipping away at and what needs my attention. So take a screenshot of this. We've got spirituality, family, health, money/career, romance, passions, friendship, adventure, freedom. I'm gonna erase this, and I want to show you this other image that's gonna help you with your micro clarity as you're filling all this in and really seeing how you're doing. So we talked first about the macro clarity of where do we want to be. Now we're sort of talking a little bit more about where we are right now, right? Which is what some of this is. So I'm going to erase this, and I'm going to give you another example that I think is really going to help you. So screenshot. All right, so we're going to do this time as a bar graph, and this is something that I type up into a little document with the bar graph, and I send it to my clients, and I constantly am, I don't know, constantly might be it exaggeration, but definitely each week I'm looking at this in my own life, and I'm rating myself, and I'm tweaking it, and I'm looking at what needs my attention, and I'm adjusting my decisions based on this. All right, so we've got bar graph, 1 to 10, and then we've got our different categories down here. So let's say spirituality is here. And then we're going to do family. Then we're going to do health. Then freedom. Then money. Then romance. Put a little heart there, saves us some space. I know that heart looks terrible. Romance. I think it is passions. Oh, adventure, that was the one I forgot with the previous thing we were just doing. Say friendship and then adventure. I know it's a little hard to read, but still helpful to have those down there, and you have all the categories from the previous slide. So if you need to, you could just go back to that too. So let's do a makeup bar graph. I'm not gonna do my numbers here, but we'll just, we'll make up what somebody's numbers might be, right? Let's take a little more of a variety, because in the last example, all the numbers were low. This time I'm gonna pick some that are higher and some that are lower, because I think it will be more helpful to see something like that. So spirituality, let's say this person is a 2. Let's say this is something they've been neglecting. Family, let's say their family's going, for the most part, really well. Let's say a 7. Health, say their health is a 6. Freedom, let's say they're struggling with their freedom. Let's say their freedom is a 2. And again, let's assume that this is their order, right? Money, let's say that money is a 3. Romance, let's say that's going well for them. Let's say that's an 8. Okay, passions. Let's say passions, they're going okay. Let's say it's a 4. Friendship. Let's say friendship is a 5. And adventure, let's say that one not as good. Let's say adventure is like a 3. Adventure, fun, variety. All right, so this is starting to take shape. So now what we're gonna do, all right, so this is something that I use a lot in my own life, and I find this to be extremely helpful. So this is basically like a snapshot of how your life is going, or this person's hypothetical life. My ordering, but hypothetical numbers, different numbers. So whenever I'm looking at something like this in my own life or with somebody else, the first thing I'm looking at is 3s and below. Right? 3s and below. In my opinion, if we rate something a 3 or lower, it basically means we feel that thing is not going well, right? We're not happy campers with how that's going. It needs some serious attention. And so let's say that for your areas, right? So you should be rating yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, all these things. But let's just look for this person and then you can apply it for yourself. So this person, their levels that were a 3 or below are spirituality, freedom, money, and adventure. So I would want to know, why they rated themselves there, how are those things going, and then I would be looking to incrementally improve it, right? Now, really, ideally, what we also want to know is we want to know what a 10 is in each of these categories, right? We want to know what a 10 is in each of these categories. What is the ideal? And then I think we really want to have a goal, relatively short-term goal, to get to an 8 or above as quickly as possible. So the red, these are the areas that are not going so well. The blue, I think anything that's like 4 to a 6, 4 to a 7, it's 4, 5, 6, sort of going okay, not great, but good, okay, decent. I think anything that's an 8 or above, we feel that's going very well. So if we could have all the areas of our life going very well, that'd be pretty amazing. And if we could get all of them to a base 10, obviously they could all always be better. But if we could get all of them to a base 10, that would be really amazing. So that's what we would really like to do. So you can sort of imagine like this. We're wanting to get to that 8 mark, and really ideally to the 10 mark in each of these. right? So you want to take some time to really define, okay, well, you know how the activity we did with the macro clarity, right? So what does my life look like if it's perfect in every way and impossible to fail? Now what we want to do is we want to start doing that for each of these. So you want to write out each of these, and you want to write out what it would be if it was perfect, right? So spirituality. So let's say for me, a goal that I have in the spirituality category is I want to get to Mass one time a week over the course of this year, average for 2023, right? So I have written goal. I go to Mass one time per week, average 2023, or all of 2023, however you want to say that. That would be one example of what a 10 is for me. Maybe other examples of what a 10 is spirituality is, you give thanks for three things per day, or you look over, whether it's your Bible or something else that you believe, or whatever you believe, something that maybe there's something that you're reading once a day or even once a week. Maybe you're part of a group or something that you meet with once a week. But you want to define what a 10 is, and you want to sort of understand where you're at right now, why you rate yourself a 2. So maybe this person, maybe they want to get to services of whatever they believe, but they haven't in a long time. And they feel really bad about that, and haven't been praying, and they feel bad about that, or whatever. And this is not, a video telling people what to believe, but this is, I think, a category of what it means to be a human being. There is this element to us. I think there is an element of spirituality to human beings. I would sort of want to know, like, okay, well, what would it take for this person to get to a 3, right? And then do something small. Like, under what circumstances would they be able to rate themselves a 3 or a 3.5 or a 4? And then we would do that. And we'd want to get up there. Maybe that person goes to Mass, or maybe that person reads a passage, or maybe that person, whatever, right? Maybe there's something small where they're like, you know what, if I did blah, 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 I could rate myself a 4. Like, okay, perfect. Let's knock that out this week, right? Family's going really well. But again, we want to ask, okay, what would family look like if it's perfect in every way and impossible to fail? What are all the things that would be going on? The more in detail you can be about each of these things, then the better it's going to go. So you want it to be big, right? So it's compelling, it's exciting, and you want it to be as clear as possible. So maybe if family was a 10, you'd be having family dinner every night, and you'd be going to, your kids' sporting events once a week, and you'd be helping them with your homework each day, and you'd be tucking them in at night, and maybe there's one other thing. I don't know, right? So I'm trying to give some examples. But you'd want to know what this is, and you'd be like, okay, well, I'm at a 7. What does an 8 look like, right? Incrementally improve. Health. 6, where are you now? Well, maybe you're, working out twice a week, and your nutrition's okay, but not great. And your sleeping's okay, but not great. We did this in the How to Live in a Peak State video, but, I'd probably know, well, what does an 8 look like? And maybe the person's like, well, if I was getting to the gym and working out or doing some form of physical exercise 5 times a week, I could rate myself an 8, and they're at a 3, 3 times a week. So maybe we get to 4 and then to 5. So maybe within 2 weeks, they're at an 8, right? And so now that category is in the green. So that's good. For spirituality, we'd probably also want to know not only what is a 10, what is a 4, but what is an 8? Like, what would really need to happen for us to get up to the green in that one? Freedom. So, same thing. For every single one of these categories, you want to ask, what would spirituality look like if it's perfect in every way, impossible to fail? What would family look like? Perfect in every way, impossible to fail. Right, everything. What would that look like? What would health look like? It's perfect every way and impossible to fail. And again, the more detailed you can be, the more clear, and the more it excites you what you're writing down, the better, right? The more likely you're going to want to go there, and the more your mind can sort of click in and understand what you're saying. So for some people, freedom will look different than others. Some want to be an entrepreneur and just have to be their own boss, and then for other people it's different. But for this person who's at a 3, I'd want to ask them how that's going, and what their frustrations are, and how we could get to a 4. What would a 4 or 5 be? What would an 8 be? What would a 10 be? What would need to happen for those things to happen? And then we're incrementally improving, right? The things where we're down at a 3, that's where our momentum is the lowest. And so we really want to try to ask small things of ourselves. So if we're at a 3, maybe getting to like a 3.5 one week, and then a 4 the next week, and then 4.5 the next week, and then 5 the next week. So then within 30 days, all of a sudden you're from 3s to 5s, potentially, if you can do that, or at least maybe in some categories. So it's important to note also that these 3s, they pull down the others, right? The same with the garden, like the weeds can get, in and they can all affect each other. So when you've got things that are 3s, it sort of has like this pull down effect on everything, right? These things don't really exist in all of their own small little separate boxes, for better or for worse. So, if you're not showing up spirituality wise, it's affecting your family, it's affecting your health. Money, it's affecting your freedom, it's affecting your health, it's affecting your family. Adventure, it's affecting probably how you show up for your family. They all have this sort of cumulative effect on each other. There's a great line from Jim Rohn where he talks about how everything affects everything else. And yeah, it's not just all in these little boxes. You want to think of all these things as sort of moving and alive and affecting one another. And they're all things that need our attention. A lot of times people think, oh, well, there's kind of money and there's career and then there's everything else. And so they kind of focus on that and neglect everything else. But, when they do that, even all these other categories that they're neglecting, they're pulling down the money category. That person is not showing up and selling as much as they could if they allotted to some of these other things. So understand that these aren't just detrimental to themselves within that one category. They're actually pulling down all the categories, which obviously is a problem. So, and then adventure, So I would want to know why that person rated that. We'd want to know, what does a 10 look like, right? What would adventure look like if it's perfect in every way and impossible to fail? And we write and we want to know what that is. And then we want to know, what would a 4 be? What would a 3.5, what would a 4 be? And we're kind of increasing all that. And then the more clear we're getting with all this stuff, we're really wanting to inch all these things up, right? We're wanting to inch all these things up. And that's sort of part of the game of life, right? It's just improving our lives. But this makes it so we have this screenshot, right? And this is something that I think about a lot in my own life of like, okay, where are the areas that need attention? Where are my low areas? How can I incrementally improve them? How can I make some decisions today to allot more of my time, energy, money, resources to those things that need some more of my attention, right? And so you can have your own bar graph and the own little lines here, right? So 3 or below, not so good. This is sort of okay. This and above is great. We want to know what a 10 is. And then the more we have all the details of these things, then we can really write specific goals, right? So we can have specific goals for each of these categories. So for example, for me, the spirituality category, one of my goals is that I go to mass 1 time a week average over the course of the whole year, 2023, right? That's a specific goal. I think that 1 year goals are really good. There's a lot of people say 1 year's goals are good because they're sort of long enough that you can accomplish something exciting, but it's short enough that it feels close. It feels like it's not so far away. It's within reach, Family, how much time do you want to spend with them? What do you want to be doing with them? How can we write that in a way that's specific? For example, a family goal could be, I have dinner with my family at 6:30 p.m. every night, or I have dinner with my family at 6:30 p.m. 5 nights a week average over the course of 2023, right? Super specific. So we want things in each of these categories. Maybe for health, I work out 5 times a week average over the course of the year 2023. I lose 10 pounds in weight, or gain 10 pounds if you want to gain weight of muscle or whatever, and I weigh this amount by January 1st, 2024. Freedom, where I become a full-time entrepreneur by, June 1st, 2024, right? Money, I get out of debt by this year. I pay off credit cards by this day, or I pay off my car payment by this day, or I have this much money in my checking account by this day, or whatever. So these are all examples, but 1 year goals are really good. So you want to think for each of these category of like, okay, well, what are all the things that you want to happen within the next 12 months? And some of them will be shorter, right? They don't have to all be 1 year long, but I think when you think within 1 year, that's really helpful. But remember, you want to really, really think of the big picture of your life too, right? So when you're answering the question of what does my life look like if it's perfect in every way and impossible to fail, that's really the big picture, your whole life, like out until 80, 85, whatever, 90, whatever. You're really wanting to know the picture. And that's when you're filling everything in. And then we're getting into more of the micro clarity, right? So there's the analogy of the garden, there's this analogy with the bar graph. And so we can really see this snapshot. How is our life going, more or less? How is everything going? How are we doing? What are things that need more of our attention? What are the things that we're doing a good job of? What little incremental improvements can we make? How do we define a 10 in each of these categories? What are the specific things we'd like to happen, let's say, within the next year? People like 3 and 5 year goals too. Those are good. This sort of like semi-short term, 3 to 5 years. And then long term, so you could say, where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years in each of these? And where do you want to be over a lifetime? Like, what are your lifetime family goals, lifetime health goals, lifetime passions goals, lifetime adventure goals, lifetime romance goals, big picture, life, the whole picture, decades. Like I said, the further we can zoom out, the more we can see the entire chessboard, the more strategic we can play. We can play the long game, and we can be building something with our whole life in mind. Like we said, we dream our painting and then paint our dream, right? So you don't want to dream your painting and paint your dream with one little tiny corner of the canvas. You want to try to really see the whole canvas and really paint the whole picture and have all this flowing together. So I'm going to erase this, and we're going to get into real quick another part of clarity, where we can actually start to really design things in even more detail, right? So once we start to have all this, we kind of know how things are going. We kind of starting to know what our ideals are. Is we want to know, okay, well, what would an ideal day look like? What would an ideal week, month, year look like? And the more we can answer those things, the more we can actually build our life around those things, and all of a sudden our life looks like the ideal. So that's actually possible to do, not always immediately, but it is possible to do. So let's go through an example of that real quick so that you're able to do that for yourself also. So take a screenshot of this. I know that's a lot, but I think this will be really helpful for you guys because you can make your own and you can work on this for yourself. So you've got spirituality, family, health, freedom, money, romance, passions, friendship, adventure. Got our bar graph here, 3 or below, not so great. 4, 5, 6, okay. 8 and above, good. All right, screenshot, gonna delete it. Okay. Let's say ideal day, right? Because if we can know what our ideal day is, we can sort of start to stack out our days, week, month, year, right? And our days make up our life. So if we know what would be in our ideal day and we can put that, then, that's helpful for us to know. It means we can really be designing our life how we want. So I'm gonna give some examples for me of things that I know about myself that would be my ideal day. And then I'm gonna give you maybe a little example of constructing it so that you can know how to do this for yourself. So for me, one of my happy places is the beach. I love being at the beach. So it probably had the beach in there somewhere. So I'm gonna say beach. And then I love driving. I'm a car person. I love driving. Even if it's not a nice car, I still enjoy being in the car. It's very relaxing for me. It's sort of like therapeutic for me. It calms me. I like seeing the world go by. I like feeling the air, like listening to music, whatever. So I've always enjoyed being in the car or driving. It's always had a very like calming or pleasant effect on me, I guess. And so it's something that I know about myself. I love cars, I love driving. It's a time when I'm happy, when life makes sense. So let's say car, time in the car. Dance, salsa, I dance salsa. Super passionate about that. It's super important to me. My ideal day would definitely involve that. Maybe working out as well. it would probably involve meeting with a couple clients, right? I love what I do. I would, even do this for fun. Now, of course, I charge because I have to survive and make a good living too, right? But I'm happy when I'm doing that. I'm happy my life makes sense when I'm doing that. I think that I'm doing the type of work I'm supposed to be doing, and that's really fulfilling to me. So I think that my ideal day would probably have at least a small handful of clients, I would say. Reading, I love to read, I love to study, I love to figure out how do things work so I can try to understand it better and try to explain it better for people, and helps me in my life and I can help people in their lives as well. So would probably involve some reading, even if it was just a little bit that day. Some days would be more than others. Maybe creating some content. I really enjoy creating content. It's something that gives me joy. I'm a very creative person. So this is something that I enjoy, and it's a way I think I can help people. So it may involve at least a little bit of that. It may involve some time with friendship or family, at least if not every day, sometime during that week, let's say. And then it would probably involve romance too. It would probably involve, going out on a fun date with a great girl, a beautiful girl, right? And enjoying her company. Probably during the nighttime, right? So I think that's something that'd be part of my ideal day. So these are some things that are important to me. That'd be part of my ideal day where I'm happiest, or where I'm in flow, or life makes sense, right? So I could start to kind of try to structure the day, right? So maybe let's put an N for nighttime. So romance, salsa, maybe that stuff is at night. Maybe we've got, let's say this is within the week. Maybe we got clients in the morning. Just gonna X that out because maybe this is in my week, ideal week. We're just doing the day for now. Maybe content and reading. Maybe working out here. Driving in the car to go to the beach. There we go. So that sort of gives you an idea of how you can start to design an ideal day. So I could even put exact hours on this. Maybe clients are from, I don't know, just making this up, maybe it's like 8 to 11. Content, 11 to 12. Reading, 12 to 1. Working out, 1 to 2. Car and beach, 2 to 7. Salsa and romance, 8 to 1 a.m., let's say, right? So there you go. So this gives you a rough idea of like, oh, okay, so we just designed an ideal day. So how did we do that? I know certain things about myself that make me happy, that put me in flow, that bring me joy, that are ideals for me, and they're based in things that are core for all of us, but they're also specific to me. And so I wrote all those out, knowing those about myself, and I know these things about myself because I put in a lot of work on myself, right? So you might say, hey, Justin, what if I don't know what this stuff is? Well, doing that macro clarity activity is gonna help you with that. But you start to get an idea of what this is, and then you can put it into a day, and all of a sudden, we're designing our days like that, and all of a sudden we're living the dream, right? So again, this stuff is a process. But here's a little hypothetical day, right? So gives you a good idea of how you can design your ideal day. And then there may be other things that are in your ideal week or month that are not as often. So maybe I have breakfast with my mom and dad, once a week, and have lunch with my mom once a week, and talk with my little brother twice a week, and I write that stuff out. And those are things that are part of my week and my month. So not everything has to be daily, but you can see this is really helpful. And you can look at that and be like, oh, okay, that might be creatable, doable, right? So yes, this gives you an example of how to design that. So take a screenshot. I'm gonna erase this, but we've got ideal day, things that I enjoy. So beach, car, salsa, working out, clients, reading, content, romance, right? And then I put them in an order that I think they might be in, and then I put some times on them, and you can do the same thing. So screenshot, and I'm gonna erase it now. All right, guys, as a quick recap, in the first video, the video previous to this, which again, if you didn't watch it, I'll put a link in the description below. But in the first video, we learned to manage our state, right? So just to back up for a moment, my favorite definition of success by a gentleman named Earl Nightingale, and he says success is the pursuit of a worthy ideal, right? Meaning if you know what you want and you're moving towards it, then you're a success. And I love this definition because this is really where, happiness and confidence and self-esteem and fulfillment and all this good stuff, it comes from that. It comes from moving towards a worthy ideal, going towards something that excites us, right? So that can be portrayed like this. Right? And he estimates that by this definition, only 5% of people are successful. So 1 in 20. So not very many. And we're starting to learn why that's so difficult, right? It involves thinking, and thinking is hard. And there's lots of reason that these types of thinking is hard. So in the first video, the previous video, we learned about how to manage our state, right? So we're here. If we want to go here, we've got to have some energy, right? We've got to learn to show up in the world in a way where we can go out there and we can execute, because if we can't do that, then we can't really do anything else, right? And so we started with that. And then in this video, we looked at clarity, right? So once we've got some energy to do things, then we got to figure out, well, where the heck are we right now? And where do we want to go, right? We have to orient ourselves. And as we talked about, there's a lot of reasons why that's tricky. Right? It sounds easy, but it's not. But in this video, you guys got a really, really, really good overview of how clarity works, right? A final thing I can share, is just like moment to moment clarity, right? Moment to moment, what should you do? The better your macro and micro clarity is, the better you can see the whole picture, the better you can know what to do. But as a general rule, this is something Tony Robbins talks about also, is knowing your outcome moment to moment. So whenever you're just in a moment, you're trying to figure out, well, what should I do in this situation? It always depends. It always depends on what you want to happen. I'll put this O is your outcome, right? Your outcome. When we know what we want to happen, we can know what we should do. If we don't know this, we don't know, right? And so the more we've got this really, really big picture clarity, we've got micro clarity in our ideal day, week, month, year, and all these categories of our lives, and defining what a 10 is for all of them and weaving them all together and all this stuff, we're really, really learning our outcomes well. And we're making it specific enough that our brain really knows what we're talking about. And when we're really knowing our outcomes well, we're gonna do a much better job going here. There's a great little story I think Brian Tracy tells. It's about the author or the philosopher Socrates. And there's this old man, and he's walking around, and he sees this other or I don't know if this guy's old. He's like a guy, a citizen, and he sees this old guy on the road, and he's like, "Old man, I'm trying to go to Mount Olympus. Can you show me the way?" And the old man turned out to be Socrates, but this other guy, he didn't know that. Famous philosopher, super famous, one of the most famous of all time. And Socrates is like, "Well, I can show you the way, but just make sure that every step you take is in that direction," right? So it's like, but we have to know where we want to go to take our steps in that direction, right? And so without this, you really can have zero clue what you should do. So we want to make sure every step that we take is in that direction. And this is hard, guys. This is, like we said, it's putting in the repetitions. It's doing that activity that we talked about, of working on that question. What does my life look like if it's perfect in every way and impossible to fail? You know, this takes thinking, and thinking is hard work, and most people don't want to think. Earl Nightingale, the gentleman that talked about this definition, he shares stories of this idea of follow the follower, right? That, you know, these two guys grow up, and, you know, they grow up in the same town, and then they talk to each other, and it's like, hey, you should come where I work, you know, pay is okay, benefits are good, and, you know, they kind of stay in the same town, and they all think the same, they do the same thing, they got the same mediocre life that they don't really like. There's another great example of this that he tells of follow the follower, how none of us are really thinking for ourselves, right? Is there's this gentleman who goes down by this store, this clock shop, and he's a guy who works at the factory, at the plant, and he's got an important job, and he, you know, blows the whistle at the plant. And so he's like, well, I gotta go by this clock store every day to make sure that, you know, my watch is right, because I have to blow the whistle down at the plant when everybody's supposed to be done. So I have to make sure that, you know, that I'm blowing it at the right time, right? And so he's doing that for years. And one day, the guy who's the owner of the clock shop, he always thought that's so weird. Why does this guy, you know, do this every day and look at my clocks and setting his watch? And so one day, the guy who, the owner of the clock shop, he said to the gentleman, he's like, hey, you know, why do you always set your clock to my clocks every day? You know, I always wanted to know why you do this. And the guy was like, well, you know, I've got a really important job down at the plant. I have to blow the whistle, you know, when everybody's done working, so I got to make sure that it's on time. And the guy who's the owner of the clock shop is like, well, that's interesting, because I always set my clocks to the whistle of the place, to the whistle of the plant. And so basically they were both following each other, and neither of them were thinking. And so this is what most people do. Right? Most people, they're all going together. None of them know where they're going. None of them are thinking. And they're all following each other. And we're learning why that is. Because this is hard. The same way push-ups are hard, the same way running is hard, the same way any type of discipline is hard. You're sitting down and you're mapping this stuff out, and it's work. And this is one reason people pay me, because it's hard and it's work, right? But you can do this stuff. You can do this. So we've got our state, right? The first video was how to live in a peak state. Now we've got some energy. Now we can go do things. Now we learned, okay, cool. Now that I've got energy, what do I do now? Well, where do I want to go? And where am I now? And how do I go about structuring all of this stuff so that I sort of see the whole big picture of what's going on here and what I want to create, you know, and allowing yourself to dream, right? Allowing yourself to dream, allowing to kind of let your mind go, allowing to kind of relax and just see what comes up. And as you practice dreaming and as you dream more, your dreaming muscles, if you will get better, and you will start to have a better and better idea of how you want all this to look. So, clarity. That's what we worked on today. Guys, I know there's a ton of information in this video, but this is what I do with my clients. This is all the details of clarity. So after we work on fixing their state, that's the first 30 days we do that. And then clarity is sort of an ongoing thing, right? We're always building this out more. So this is sort of like a lifetime project, and it's a project that's always being tweaked and worked on, and getting new clarity of what a 10 is and what an ideal day is and what we want of all the goals and all these different categories and how we want all this to fit together and how we're doing with all of it, right? So this is something that is sort of constantly being done as I'm working with people. It's not like, oh, the next 30 days we do this, but basically once people learn to manage their state, the next thing I do is we start having them rate themselves in all of these metrics. So they've got their bar graph, they see how they're doing. We're working on incrementally improving things. We're working on macro clarity. We're working on filling everything in. And it's something we're always working on. It's always in flux. We're always improving it. but this is sort of the next thing that I start to do with my clients once they learn to manage their state. And this is, at least of all that I can think of right now and all that I've prepared for in this video, this is everything of clarity, of starting to map that out. This is everything you need to know. So it's enough that you can do it all on your own without my help. If you would like my help, of course, I'm happy to learn more and see if I'm able to, and if I am, then I would be happy to work with you. So that's all for this video, guys. I hope this was helpful. It's the first time I've shared all this in this way, but I really enjoyed sharing this with you. I hope that you've enjoyed watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.